Hello, I'm Doug, and welcome to the Crew of Japan podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture.
This time on Crew of Japan podcast.
With the introduction of streaming services and global accessibility via the internet, the Japanese independent film scene has a rapidly growing fan base worldwide. That interest in Japanese cinema doesn't escape us here on the podcast either. I mean, our very own co-host Nigel is a huge Japanese cinema connoisseur. So when the opportunity arose back in January 2021 for us to sit down and have a chat with a Japanese Academy Award-winning director about his experiences in the Japanese film industry, there was no way in hell we were going to say no to that. Enter Eiji Uchida, the director of numerous Japanese independent films and series. Among his works is Midnight Swan, which was nominated for 6 awards and won 3 awards in 2020, including the Japanese Academy Award for Picture of the Year. During our exclusive interview with Uchida-san, we explored what led him to his career in film, the importance of diversity in the movies, how internationalization through streaming services like Netflix changed his cinematic approach, why filming in Shinjuku is a big no-no, and so much more. This was our first foray into a bilingual interview, and we are so thankful for the services of our interpreter Yumi. So I hope you enjoy, and let's hop into the interview. All right, welcome back to our podcast. And today we have a very, very, very special guest with us in Japan, actually, right now. The award-winning director of the film Midnight Swan. We have Eiji Uchida. Crew of Japan podcast でようこそ。
よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。Let's start. Usually we just have question and answer. We prepared some questions today. And feel free to answer however you like. And we can go from there. So our first question is, before we go on to the main topic of film and the film industry in Japan, we like to ask our guests to share their connection to New Orleans if they have one. Have you been to New Orleans before? If so, what's your favorite memory? And if you haven't, what is the first thing you think of when you hear New Orleans?
はい。ニューオーリンズは
So first of all, unfortunately, I never had an opportunity to visit New Orleans yet. I have traveled many places in the United States, not yet New Orleans, but I had long wish to visit that wonderful city. And then, of course, the image I have toward New Orleans is music is the first thing coming in my mind, jazz, blues, of course. And also, actually, about 10 years ago or so, there was a Japanese TV program about the grandma who plays the cool drums, and she traveled to New Orleans with her granddaughter. And she had an opportunity to play drums in a very well-known music club in New Orleans. So that was a very popular one, and so many Japanese people watched that video, program. So that was another image I come up in my mind when I heard the word New Orleans.
What is the name of the show, if you don't mind me asking?
あんまり覚えてないんですけど、日本テレビ。
I forgot the exact title, but that was part of the program by Nihon Terebi Broadcasting Company, and I believe the very famous Akashiya-sama was hosting that program, and it's a very well-known one. Actually, it's kind of behind the stories there. I really like that story, so I wanted to make it a movie out of it. So I actually talked to the director of the program. Things didn't go well as I expected, but that's the connection I have.
Wow, that's I'll have to look that up. I'm interested to know what the name of it is and maybe watch it one day.
Actually, I know exactly what it is. I can send you a link.
Sounds good.
It's available on the YouTube. ぜひ見てみたいので、ちょっと探して、YouTube に確か、違法ですけど上がってたので、おばあちゃんがドラム叩くとこだけ。
ああ、そうですね。YouTube で上がってますね。
はい。
いいね、いいね。All right, well, let's move on to our next question. And this one's kind of just a self-introduction. Who is Eiji Uchida? What inspired you to pursue a career in film? And being born and raised in Brazil until the age of 11, how did your life experiences carry over into your works?
はい。
So, as you said, yes, I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil until up to 11 years old. And so I was living in a community where many of the populations were Black people. And I didn't go to the Japanese weekend school or anything. Basically, I was going to the local school. So I was among with the Brazilians. So that was my natural environment. So that definitely made some kind of impacts to my life. But actually, after I moved to Japan, there are more culture shocks sort of that has a little confused or didn't have a clear understanding what's going on in my life.
特にですね。
So I was living in Brazil because of my father's job, because he was working for a Japanese company. So my living situation was quite fortunate in kind of safe area. But just a few minutes away from my community, there are slum, very, not really safe, kind of violent type of community were right there. So I have experienced that very two extreme environments from I was very little. So that was also another interesting experiences in my life, living in Brazil.
なんでまあ日本
So as you know, Japanese society is always looking for average, being somewhere in the middle, the same as others. That's the kind of tendency of Japanese society is always look for. So it's very different from where I came from. And so looking at that society, I could see the good sides and bad sides. And so that also definitely a big part of my life.
で2つ目の質問がそうですね俳優になりたい
So I never ever in my entire life wanted to be an actor. I didn't ever want to be in front of the camera, actually. But I feel much more comfortable being behind the camera. That's where I want to be.
カメラの前に立て
If somebody forces me to stand in front of the camera, I will even think about quitting. That much I don't like it.
Me personally, I am not an actor myself, so I couldn't do the in front of the camera work either. It's just not for me.
昔
So a little while ago, I was actually watching the Indonesian movie. So the director was asking me, like, can you play a little role of Japanese person in a movie? And I was like, well, it's in Indonesia. Nobody's going to really watch it, so maybe it's okay. So I did very few seconds, and I really didn't like it. It really made me confirm that's not what I want to do at all.
That's funny. That's great. So which directors have influenced your approach to directing movies? Who has inspired you the most? Is it like directors like Mizoguchi Kenji, Teshigahara Hiroshi, or Ozu Yasujiro, or any other directors out there that may have inspired your work?
そうですね
So of course, those wonderful producers and directors from the early era of Japanese movies, I've watched them all, and they are so great. I watch them more like to study or learn something from them, because kind of academic subjects sometimes. I was more influenced by those directors and producers from the 70s, like Toei or Nikkatsu, those movies, a lot of actions and different type of subjects. And also, of course, Fukasaku Kenji is one of the great directors I was influenced. And the more I was influenced from the 90s, Kitano Takeshi, he was one of the top one I was so influenced from.
I wish one of our other hosts is a really big fan of Japanese film and wish he could have been here today, but he would have loved to hear and get some more opinions from you. So maybe next time we can do another one and you can kind of share thoughts. That'd be great.
Of course.
Looking back at your career and up to this point, what do you think was like whether it was a film or a TV show or something you worked on that was the turning point for you, and then sent your career in film on its current upward trajectory?
そうですねいくつかあるんですけど僕は
So I was in actually publishing business until 33 years old. So my career in the filming industry started kind of late. About 10 years ago, I produced a movie. It's called Grateful Dead. And in Japan, actually, it was really not doing the business-wise well at all. But somehow we were invited to show the movie at the international movie festivals. And then at the end, the movie was shared in over 50 different countries. And that gave me a really great opportunity to explore in different worlds. So that was one of the top ones that gave me a lot of turning points. And another one is in one of those international movie festivals, I had opportunity to meet English producer is called Adam Toro, and he and I became a very interesting relationship, and that gave me another opportunity to have a different kind of turning point, and it really changed my movie filming environment of my life. So those two, as the Naked director was definitely influenced by that meeting with those different people at the international movie film festivals. So the Grateful Dead and Naked director from Netflix, those two were the turning points of my life.
I actually really want to watch The Naked Director on Netflix. It's on my list of shows to watch. I have a long list, a lot of shows I want to watch on Netflix, but that's definitely one of them, especially after talking with you today. I definitely want to watch it now.
Thank you. ありがとう。
One of your most well-known works is one of your more recent projects, Midnight Swan. In 2020, Midnight Swan won Best Film at the Japanese Academy Awards, and you were a nominee for Best Director. For those films, and those who in our audience may not be familiar with it, could you give us a short description of Midnight Swan and let our listeners know what it's about?
はい。僕の最新作で
Yes, that's one of the very recent movie that I produced, and that was actually became in public in September 2020. And it's still actually showing at some of the theaters in Tokyo area, so it's a kind of long run. And so the movie is about a woman who is a transgender, and the relationship with her and the very lonely young girl who is a ballet dancer. So that's the simplest way I can explain about that movie.
Is the film available to international audiences? Once I heard of it, it sounded interesting to watch. I really wanted to watch it, but has it gone overseas to theaters, or is it planning on coming out anywhere on like streaming applications or anything like that?
そうですね。多分日本の Amazon だけでしか視聴できない。
Currently, on Amazon Prime in Japan, they can watch this movie, but it does not have a English subtitle yet. But at this point in Hawaii movie festival and Italy and Taiwan, they're still showing this movie. So I see the big possibilities that will be released in foreign countries sometimes in the future.
And especially in the world today, representation and diversity is a very important topic and has gotten a lot more emphasis, especially in the film industry. How important was it for you to give an accurate portrayal of a transgender person in Japan to a mainstream audience in movie theaters? Do you feel that the film helped raise some awareness for issues within the LGBTQ plus community in Japan?
そうですね。おっしゃられるように
You're right. As you said, these days main flaw of the movie industry is really talking about diversity. That's one of the top topic these days. And of course, there are so many movies involved in the LGBTQ+. But in the meantime, when you look at the Japanese movie industry, is it really going along with that? Realistically, it's not there yet. So I have had some opportunity to be involved in a transgender community, and so I've seen with my own eyes what's going on. So I really wanted to make a movie. But I didn't want to just make something for just a limited number of people, several thousand people watch it as a very artistic special club kind of movies. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to show it to as many people as possible to give them an opportunity to think about the reality. There's something they might not know yet, especially young people in Tokyo or Osaka, those big cities. They have more opportunity to be explored in that issue. So many young people seriously consider about this, social issue. But when you look at the other area, unfortunately, still many people are not really aware what's going on or not even know there was a problem. So I really want to make this movie available as part of entertainment that people want to watch it, so it can bring a chance for them to see the reality and think something. Just opportunity to think something. That's why I really wanted to do it.
ただですね、やっぱりここまで
So this movie fortunately received so many great awards and awareness, and it's actually beyond my expectation. I really didn't expect things to be happening like this, and this movie hit the market very well. It was beyond my expectation, so it was a nice surprise.
まあ、それでまあいろんな意見
Because this movie became very popular, I received so many different opinions and comments about this, good and bad. Some are agreeable, something disagreeable, and I think that's great. And so, because there are some people out there don't even know the word transgender, they've never heard that word before. It's very different than the other countries about the situation. I was kind of hoping that movie was able to make the first step for everybody to learn something and then think about this.
It's fantastic. And I agree. I think that representation and having that in mainstream film is one of the main medias that people absorb, watching movies on TV or Netflix or in the movie theater. And being able to see that, and maybe in a way they wouldn't not have been exposed to it before, is important, I think, just to see and be aware of issues that are different from your own and things that people are going through in their own lives that are very different from what that individual is experiencing. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate it myself.
そうですね。日本はね、
In Japan, actually, we have very big numbers of the small theaters called art house. We do have opportunity to show that movie in many of those art house. And of course, they played at the big cinema complex in a huge movie theaters as well. So I believe about 800,000 audiences had opportunity to watch that movie. And it's been about a year and a half or so since it was released. So, of course, as I said earlier, I received so many different opinions and comments, like some people think this way or that way. And I think that's really, really important that they think something watching this movie. That was totally, I was really looking for. So, and I could tell Japanese people were seeking something, that kind of opportunity to learn.
It's great. And again, we were talking a lot about the social issues in the movie itself, but it sounds like there's a lot of everything else as well. Like you can get a good image of like the Shinjuku area and understand what life is like in there. I've been to Shinjuku countless. I can't count how many times I've been to Shinjuku. And I know that feeling of chaos and how the nightlife can get in Shinjuku. So I'm sure seeing on like big screen would just help me kind of bring me back to that area and feel, especially in a time when we can't really travel, feel like we're in Shinjuku, in that area, and enjoy, the movie and all the stories that come with those characters.
ただですね、撮影は新宿で
To be actually show you some behind the story, that filming was not done, most of the parts, not in Shinjuku.
新宿がですね、
Behind the story, Shinjuku area, especially the main Kabukicho area, are actually prohibited to do filming by the government. So there's very strict restrictions out there. And also Japanese Yakuza, gang members, there are quite numbers of gang members working around that area. So if we just do the filming without their permission, we could be in trouble, easily. So we had to film somewhere, had a similar color as Shinjuku. So sometimes we did it in Yokohama and a few other areas.
Yeah, you don't want to make the Yakuza mad.
そうですね。
Yeah, it gets a little better under the control because of the Japanese police restrictions, but still they're out there. So yeah, we have to be careful.
Well, I can't wait to watch Midnight Swan, whether it's when I travel to Japan and visit friends and family and can watch it on their Amazon Prime account there, or, maybe if it comes overseas, whether in a movie theater or on streaming services, I can't wait to give it a watch.
はい、ぜひ来てほしい。
Yes, please.
Well, speaking of streaming services, recently, over the last few years, like Netflix and other Hulu and things like that have begun to heavily feature movies and TV shows from Asia, specifically Korea and Japan. Does your approach to writing and directing change knowing that some of your work will be more geared towards an international audience instead of, just only Japanese audience?
そうですね。とても大きな変化がありまして。
So yes, actually there are big changes in the way I approach for filming. It used to be a really issue for Japanese movies. If the Japanese particular movies are good for Japanese audience, usually it's not so well accepted in the foreign countries, and vice versa. So that was always the point that the Japanese producers and directors always have to think about somewhere where we're going to draw the line. But because of Netflix and those streaming services, they really went beyond those borderlines easily. So, for example, for the Naked Director series, we had a team story making. So we invited some of the script writers from America, and he joined that team. And we discussed, okay, what's good for Japanese audience? What's good, not good for American, audiences? That's good for different countries' audiences. We were able to really openly discuss many great things. So that really helped us to go, just kind of jump off the borderline that we used to struggle a lot. So that was definitely a great change.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to bring up The Naked Director next as one of those shows that came over from Japan on Netflix. And I think I read that it was one of the first productions for Japan's Netflix branch. First of all, I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. I think I saw that somewhere. But also, what was your role on the series? Were you the main decision maker, or did you, like you said, you worked in a team? Was it more for writing, or what was your role in the series? And then what was your favorite part about that show in general?
I
was involved in about 8 episodes of the season 1 only. And so I wrote the scripts for all stories. And then I was one of the 3 directors as a team. I think it was 2 years, more like 3 years if you count from the planning to completion of the filming of that season. That was actually the program. It made Netflix very famous and then popular in Japan. So that's really, in that case, it's a significant program. But I was approaching that filming. It's just a normal as one of my work. I didn't have any particular difference of my approach for that movie. But until then, maybe the budget for a movie making was about like $100,000 or so. It was a quite low budget. And with this Netflix, of course, it was like 20, 30. It's a way bigger budget. And actually, I realized it doesn't really matter the budget to make a good movie or not. That was a realization after I finished that movie.
Again, like I said earlier, it's one of the shows that I really want to watch, and I've just reading the description of it, and it sounds entertaining. I do have one other follow-up question for you, if you don't mind. I guess, like you said, you focus on the writing and the directing of it and treat it kind of similar, but is it easier for you to develop and write characters over a series than it is to write or develop a character within one movie? I guess, which do you like doing more? Is it more of a series type work, or do you like a small one film contained character development story?
そうですね。全く違うと思ってます。キャラクターもそうな。僕はどちらかというとシリーズものはちょっと苦手。
Actually, there's a big difference between those series type of work and one story movie. I personally not really not much so fond of a series program. And so first of all, when you have to film a series, you have to have a cliffhanger. So for example, the 8 episodes, you have to have 8 times the audience wants to watch next one. You have to make that kind of scene to make sure they are curious to watch the next one. And in the movie, you don't really have to do that. So just 2 hours watching it and then enjoy the whole movie, and that's great. So that's really a big difference to when you create the characters and writing scripts. And then also for series, it takes quite a long time from the planning to the completion of filming. And then if you involve a lot of those series programs, it makes you kind of old. It takes a lot of time out of your life. So I think more and more younger people should be more involved in series movies. That's how I feel.
One other show that you had worked on recently was Shonan Junagumi. And in high school, I like to read a little bit of manga here and there, the English translations. And one of the series that I read was Great Teacher Onizuka, GTO. And it was one of my favorite series ever. Still to this day, I've probably read it 2 or 3 times over the course of the last 20 years. When doing some research, I found out that you worked on the prequel series, Shonan Junai Gumi. So were you a fan of GTO prior to working on the show? And if you were, who was your favorite member of the Onibaku group?
まさかニューオーリンズでね、
I never thought that somebody in New Orleans actually talk about Shonan Junagumi with me. That's a nice surprise.
まあ僕がティーンエイジャーの頃、とてもほとんどのね、
So when I was a teenager, almost all high school students, they love Shonan Junagumi. That was the really biggest hit of the comics. Everybody loved it. So as one of the fan of the original manga, that's why I really wanted to be directing this movie. So I had an opportunity to have a great talk with the original creator of the manga, Fujisawa Sensei. And so we had so many great stories, and then we really decided to make it as entertainment as possible. So that's how the Shonan Junai Gumi movie came out. As you may know, in Japan we have a motorcycle riders, it's called bosozoku. They just do a lot of chaotic situation with interesting modified motorcycles with a loud noise and speeding and very breaking every single regulations on the streets kind of group of people. The Shonan area was very well known with that group of people. So when I first came back to Japan from Brazil, where I was living, had those people driving around, and that gave me a great shock. So that was another reason that I wanted to make that movie.
When I lived in Fukushima Prefecture in Iwaki City, I visited some friends that lived on an area called Onahama. And in that area, it's right along the Pacific Ocean. And usually every night around 9 p.m. or so, bosozoku, ippai, like so many bosozoku would come by, loud motorcycles. You'd hear them. I mean, they may not be close, but you could hear them as if they're right next to you. It was so loud. At my friend's apartment, we'd hear them all the time. So I know about bosozoku definitely from that.
まあ、日本の暴走族はね。
Japanese bosozoku, that motorcycle rider is actually very different than Hells Angels. They're pretty much all teenagers. And once you hit adult, like 20, 21, they have to graduate. It's a very unique, cultural stuff in Japan.
彼らは20歳になる。
It was very impressive. Most of them, once they hit 20 years old, they start to find a job and work very legitimate life.
I don't know too much about bosozoku culture, but I always found it is kind of interesting. And in GTO was kind of one of the first exposures to that I had. And it's funny you brought up as Shonan Junai Gumi came out first and then GTO after. But here, GTO came out first. And then after it was kind of popular and successful, they eventually released Shonan Junai Gumi in English as well. I haven't finished reading that. I've read about 10 volumes of that. So I haven't finished it, and I don't know when I'll have time with 2 children. It's too hard.
じゃあ、漫画家の藤沢先生に。
I will tell the original creator of that manga that there is a fan in New Orleans.
Number 1 fan. All right. Well, I don't want to keep too much more of your time. So we have two short questions, kind of simple questions. The first one is, what is your personal favorite film genre, film or TV show to watch?
難しい質問ですね。
シンプルじゃないの？
シンプルじゃない。シンプルじゃない。It's not simple. 何ですかね?
That's really not a simple question, actually. It's a very tough question to answer. It's not really about genre. As I said earlier, I really, really was inspired by Kitano Takeshi's movies, and especially kind of old ones. In his movie, he somehow captured the lunatic type, the normal people living in a normal life at one point in their life lose their normality and they just show some kind of abnormal side of them. That's a kind of hint of show expression of the abnormality in Kitano Takeshi's movie, and I think that's very, very interesting. So I like to watch that kind of movie.
あとですね、ジョーカーみたいな。
Actually, like a Joker, the movie Joker, both of the social issues and the entertainment exist in a very high level. That's something I really enjoy watching.
Joker is one of the movies that I forget when it came out. Maybe was it during the middle of the pandemic? I can't remember if it was just before or at the start. And I never got a chance to watch it. And it's one of those ones I heard so much good reviews. I've watched all the Batman movies and a lot of the other comic book movies. So it's kind of something I'm interested in. But I didn't have high expectations for Joker when it came out. But apparently blew everyone's mind in terms of just how good it was.
そうですね。やっぱり今ね、アートハウス、いわゆるアート...
As we discussed earlier, there are so many movies these days showing the diversity, but basically they are very limited opportunity to reach out to the people. So they're showing at small theaters, movie festivals. It means the audiences who have opportunity to watch that kind of movie are not diverse at all. It's very ironic in that sense. To be able to reach out very diverse audiences, we have to have some kind of entertainment with the movie, even though it's talking about social issues. So, like a Joker, it has both faces being very entertainment. At the same time, it's talking about some social issues. So it can reach out great wide audiences, and that's great.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the coolest things about movies is that you can, while it is entertainment, there is a way, an avenue, a message that can be sent while you're enjoying a movie. And I think that's one of the great things about film in general.
Hi.
So before we wrap up, it's our last question, I promise. Do you have a message or some advice for listeners who are interested in getting into the film industry, or maybe they want to become a director one day? Do you have any kind of message or advice for them?
そうですね。僕自身も
I was over 30 years old when I first started really making a movie. It was kind of late start. When I have a lot of different dialogue with the young people in the different countries all over the world, these days it seems like you have to graduate the art university, have diploma, then you can get into that filming industry. And those universities is very expensive to go or hard to get in. And then it's like filming industry is isolating themselves from the general society. It's a very kind of limited numbers can get into the movie business, and that's really not good. I was like this, that I started making my own independent movie with the fundings, and I keep sending your own independent movies to the different movie festivals. And someday, your independent movie, your own movie, will be recognized or noticed by someone, and your new path of your life will be opening up. So don't get discouraged, and just keep trying, making your own one, and keep making that you want to express.
そうですね。だから多少お金のかかるインディーペンデント
So unfortunately, the independent movie with a certain level of funding is very rare to find these days. It's very extreme. One is like super big budget, super big movie, or student movie, low budget ones, and that's really not good. So that's my concern.
ただ、その日本においては、そのミッドナイトスワン。
My movie in 2020, The Midnight Swan, fortunately, that was awarded with the Japanese Academy Awards for Best Film. And I believe that's the first independent movie awarded in that ceremony. So I hope that will be giving a good turning point to the Japanese movie scene or movie scenes general to give more opportunity for independent movies. That's what I'm really hoping.
Congratulations again on your award. That's fantastic. And I can't wait to watch some of your work. I'm going to go queue up Naked Director tonight after after I put the kids to bed. I'm going to go watch an episode or two tonight and hopefully finish it up soon.
ぜひ、ミッドナイトスワンも。
I will send Midnight Swan to you, so I hope you can watch it and enjoy it.
Thank you. じゃあ、これで終わりましょうか. So that's going to be it for today's episode. And thank you again so much, Uchida-san, for coming onto our podcast for this very special interview. We're so glad to have you. And also, Yumi-san, thank you so much for providing your excellent and awesome translation work for us.
You're welcome.
ありがとうございます。
And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into the Krewe Japan podcast. What a fun conversation that was. We want to give a massive thank you to Eiji Uchida for taking the time out of his busy film schedule to join us for this episode. I particularly enjoyed geeking out towards the end about Shonan Junai Gumi and Bosozoku. I wonder if we could get Toru Fujisawa to come on here. Anyway, I digress. Since recording this interview, Uchida-san has had a couple other movies come out. In 2021, a dramedy called Shrieking in the Rain, or in Japanese, Ame ni Sakebeba. And this past August, a mystery comedy drama called Offbeat Cops, or in Japanese, Irojire wa Ongakutai. If you have a chance, check them out. Also, The Naked Director is still on US Netflix for sure, and it's definitely an interesting watch. I would also be remiss if I did not give a big thank you to friend of the podcast, Rieko, who helped in coordinating some of the logistics for this episode. And lastly, thank you so much again to our wonderful interpreter Yumi for helping us bring Uchida-san's story and experiences to you all in English. Be on the lookout because we do plan to release a full, unabridged version of this interview at a later date for all those who would love to listen to the Japanese audio. Have you seen any of Eiji Uchida's work? What's your favorite Japanese independent film? Share with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, if it's still around by the time you're listening to this, and TikTok at Krewe Japan Podcast. That's Instagram, KREWEOFJAPAN PODCAST. Facebook, just search Krewe of Japan Podcast. Twitter, again, if it's still alive, who knows at any point in time, at KREWEOFJAPAN. And TikTok is also Krewe of Japan Podcast. No spaces. Oh yeah, we're on YouTube too, don't forget about that. Go check out our backlog episodes on YouTube. Just search for Krewe of Japan Podcast. While you're there, give us a follow, like, retweet, share, comment, whatever floats your boat. Let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. Or perhaps maybe you prefer to provide your feedback in a more private setting. Send us an email at kreweofjapanpodcast@gmail.com. KREWEOFJAPANPODCAST@gmail.com. Speaking of feedback, if you're enjoying what you're listening to right now, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast streaming app. Trying to level up that rating game, y'all. Let's go! But seriously, any and all support, as always, is greatly appreciated. But that's it for today. Until next time.